All right, let's just jump right in. For decades, right, globalization has been this unstoppable force, the engine driving the whole world's economy. But what if that engine is starting to sputter? We're going to break down a speech today that makes a pretty bold claim that whole era might be coming to an end. And, more importantly, what comes next?
And here it is, the central idea, just laid right out there. The argument we're digging into today is that this 30-year-long experiment, the one with a single interconnected global economy, well, it's starting to crack. It's fracturing, and something totally new, a multipolar world, is beginning to take its place.
So, how does the speaker build this argument? Well, here's our roadmap. We're going to start by looking back at a crisis that became an opportunity. Then we'll jump to the present, checking out India's economic momentum and this changing global order. After that, things get interesting. We'll look at the biggest challenge, which the speaker says comes from within. And finally, it all comes down to a choice for the future. Let's get into it.
All right, first up, to really understand the argument about the future, the speech says we have to rewind the clock a bit. It all starts with this moment in the past, a time when, honestly, things looked incredibly tough for India. Okay, check this out. What's really wild here is just how fast everything changed. So you've got May 1998, India conducts its nuclear tests and, bam, gets hit with global economic sanctions. I mean, the outlook was grim. But then, fast forward less than 2 years to March 2000, and the US president is there on a historic visit. That's a massive turnaround. So you gotta ask, right? How on earth did that happen? Well, according to the speech, it was a pretty clever 4-step playbook. Step 1, they needed cash, but sanctions were in the way, so they issued these resurgent India bonds to Indians living abroad and raised over $5 billion. Genius. Step 2, they used that money, plus a new small tax on fuel, to kick off a huge highway building project. Step 3, to get the whole economy humming, they dropped housing loan interest rates way down, which sparked a massive construction boom. And that leads to Step 4. All that construction created a ton of jobs, especially for unskilled workers. It's laid out as this perfect example of flipping a crisis on its head. Okay, so that's the backstory. Now let's jump to today. The speech basically uses that historical turnaround as a springboard to say, look, India is in an even better position now. And it's not just talk. The speaker brings out some pretty mind-blowing data to back it up. Just look at this number, 48%. That is insane. The speaker points out that this means almost half of all the real-time digital transactions in the entire world are happening in India. Think about that. That's more than the US and China put together. It's a sign of this massive, massive digital shift that, frankly, almost nobody saw coming. And it doesn't stop there. This chart tells a really powerful story. For years, if you bought a phone in the US, it was almost guaranteed to be from China. They owned that market. But look at this now. According to the data presented here, the tables have completely turned. India has now overtaken China as the #1 exporter of mobile phones to the US. This is a huge deal, and it's a direct sign of how global manufacturing is getting a major shakeup. But it's not just about the economy. The speech argues there's been a fundamental shift in attitude, too. For a long time, there was this perception of India as a soft state, a country that was hesitant to use its military power. The speaker argues that's over. And the evidence cited? The surgical strikes after the attacks in Uri and Balakot. These are presented as proof of a new, more decisive, more confident India on the world stage. Okay, so the speech has laid out this case for India's internal strength. Now it zooms out to look at the rest of the world. And the central idea here is kind of like a process of elimination. The argument is that the other big global players are facing some serious challenges, and that creates this unique opening for India. So let's look at the two big ones. For the United States, the speech points to a couple of things. A massive financial storm brewing with Social Security liabilities. We're talking trillions. And on top of that, what's described as social friction caused by ultra-individualism. Then you look over at China. The argument there is that its massive real estate bubble has finally popped. There are big questions about its real population numbers, and its whole economy, built on exports, is looking shaky as the world pulls back from globalization. And Europe? Well, according to the speech, it's facing its own set of problems. Things like super high labor costs that make it tough to compete in manufacturing, a population that's getting older, which means a smaller workforce, and major demographic shifts. Plus, there's new pressure to spend a lot more on defense. All of this, the argument goes, makes Europe a less likely spot for big new investments. And this all leads to what you could call the default destination theory. It's a really crucial point in the speech. The idea is if you're a big company or a global investor and you see all these issues in the US, China, and Europe, where do you put your money? The argument is that India becomes the logical, almost default choice. It's not just about India's rise, but about everyone else's struggles too. Okay, so up to this point, it's all sounding incredibly optimistic, right? But this is where the speech takes a really sharp turn, a dramatic pivot, because the argument suddenly becomes that the single greatest threat to all of this potential, it isn't coming from the outside, it's coming from within. And to back this up, the speaker brings out a pretty heavy piece of evidence. This is a direct quote from what's cited as a 2016 Pakistan Senate committee report. It's presented as the smoking gun, supposedly proving an intentional strategy to weaken India by targeting its internal fault lines, with the specific goal of, and I'm quoting here, demolishing the politics of Hindutva. So what are these so-called fault lines? Well, the speech alleges they're being very deliberately exploited. The claim is that there's an effort to stir up conflict between different religious groups, to deepen caste divisions, to create a North versus South divide, and even to pit different languages against each other. Basically, to find every possible crack in the society and drive a wedge into it. And how is this supposedly happening? The speech points fingers at specific things, like international academic conferences and certain research papers. The allegation is that these are being used as tools to create and spread narratives that are designed to make these internal divisions even worse. And this quote really sums up the core of that warning. Jai Chand is a famous name in Indian history, basically a symbol for a traitor. So when the speaker says we're always defeated by the Jai Chands within our own home, it's a powerful way of saying the real danger isn't an outside enemy, but betrayal from the inside. So you've got this picture of immense opportunity on one hand and this really serious internal threat on the other. This brings us to the end of the speech, and it doesn't just give a simple, this is what will happen. Instead, it frames this very moment as a fork in the road, a critical choice that has to be made. And to really emphasize the importance of this moment, the speaker brings in something pretty unique, prophecies from two of India's most respected spiritual thinkers, Swami Vivekananda and Sri Aurobindo. The point of bringing these up is to suggest that what's happening now isn't just a random event in history, but maybe, just maybe, the fulfillment of a destiny that was predicted a long, long time ago. And really, this is what it all boils down to. The speech pulls it all together by saying, look, India has this incredible past that gives it inspiration, and this golden future is waiting. But, and this is a huge but, the only way to get from the past to that future is by protecting the present. The present is the fragile bridge, and it has to be guarded. So here it is, the choice laid out plain and simple. Path number one is about unity, about a collective spirit, about everyone pulling in the same direction to reach that golden future. Path number two, that's the path of division, of self-interest, of falling for those internal conflicts. And the warning is that this second path leads nowhere good. And this final quote just captures that tension perfectly. On one hand, this incredible optimism. India is reawakening, a glorious future awaits us. But it's immediately followed by that critical warning. But we must not make any mistake in the present. The potential is there, but it's not a done deal. It all hangs on getting the present right. Which brings us right back to a central question. The speech we've broken down paints this vivid picture of a nation standing at a crossroads. There's this incredible golden future that seems within reach, but at the same time, it's threatened by these deep internal fault lines. So the ultimate question it leaves us with is, in a world that's changing so fast, which path gets chosen?